Welcome back. Once again, adventurers, let's play Chaos Child. In the last episode, Hinae Arimoda was preparing to cross the Shibuya Scramble amidst a sea of pedestrians, confident that being in a crowd would actually be a benefit. However, this wasn't the case as Hinae herself was inadvertently thrown nearly into the path of an oncoming vehicle by seemingly none other than the apparition of her late brother Shingo. But was what Hinae saw merely a hallucination from her tired senses? Or was it a delusion deliberately created to mess with her head? Personally, if I'm being honest, it's probably safe to bet on the latter given everything that we've encountered up until this point. But that same evening, Takuru conveniently ran out of his usual supply of Mountain Dew, and so went to restock. However, on the return trip, Takuru came across, well, came across a third victim in the trio of murders that have deviated significantly from the original four victims of the second new generation serial killings. But it wouldn't be until the following afternoon that both Takuru and Hinae would be informed by none other than Detective Shinjo just exactly the identity of the unfortunate victim Takuru stumbled upon. None other than Hinae's estranged father, Koichiro Arimura. Yeah, somebody definitely has it out for Arimura in this case. Although that doesn't really explain the both the first victim who was decapitated and set on fire, as well as the second victim who was a student from Hekio Academy and who was killed with a bunch of bladed instruments and basically left to bleed out. She wasn't necessarily exsanguinated, but she still died of extreme blood loss. Shinjo took Arimura to the police station. She didn't come back. Well, no crud, she wouldn't come back. I waited for her to get in touch with me, but not only did I not get a call, I didn't even get a text message. I might have lied to her when she was a child, but Hinae's parents are still her parents. Of course, her father was dead, and he'd been horribly murdered. I could understand why. And I had no idea that the body was Arimura's father. Well, there is actually no way you could have known that unless Hinae herself had told you beforehand, Takuru. So, for what it's worth, it wasn't your fault. Of course, I had no way of knowing. So even if I couldn't help it, I still felt ashamed of having been so excited. Yeah, I know the feeling of looking forward to investigating something and the joy of unraveling mysteries only far too well.
有村、許してくれ。でも、知らなかったんだ。
I think in this situation, Hinae Arimura would definitely cut you some slack here. Arimura's dad was dead. I'd never met him, but he was the closest I'd been to any of the murder victims. In this particular timeline of causality, however, I might add. But at least Koichi was more of a was still more of a father to Hinae than somebody who I will no longer give that title to. And yesterday was the same day that Arimura said she'd been attacked. What was going on? Something entirely unexpected, and definitely something entirely different to what we've experienced in the past. Was she the next target? Well, the possibility is high, Takuru. But then who? Good question, because Riko's still in police custody, and we've had no other news from Shinjo or anyone to suggest otherwise. But there are others out there. I remembered what Arimura had said this afternoon as she left the room with Shinjo.
とにかくそういうことだ。今は混乱しているかもしれんが、一応いろいろと話を聞かなければならない。
Yeah, Shinjo might be clueless sometimes as a junior detective, but even he has an understanding of tact.
それからできれば遺体の確認もお願いしたいんだが、頼めるか?
Yeah, in other words, this particular instance especially, Takeshi Shinjo was just doing his job.
はい。
それじゃあ玄関に車を止めてやる。悪いがついてきてくれ。
Yeah, it's never easy.
有村。
兄ちゃんだわ。
え？
やったのはお兄ちゃんよ。
Ah,
有村。お兄ちゃん。
I can't remember. Can I even mention what happened to Shingo at this point in time? I heard her say it clearly. Her brother was the killer. There's only one problem with that theory. What did she mean? I heard that her brother died during the Shibuya earthquake. Sure, she did tell him. Yeah, so he does know. Which makes this all the more foreboding. Or did she mean another brother? No, Hinae Arimura only had one sibling, and that sibling died 6 years ago. Or maybe he was actually alive the whole time? Doubt it. The more I thought, the more confused I got. Eventually, I just fell into a restless sleep. Yeah, better to get a clear head. 4 days had passed since her father had been murdered. There had been no new developments in the case. All we learned was that he'd been killed somewhere else and then his body had been dumped there. Conveniently in a laundry basket. Shinjo wouldn't tell me any more than that, and neither would Kunosato. Well, to be fair, not really surprised about that. in this instance. Arimura hadn't been back to school since then. Well, since she is a person of interest, that's also not surprising. I tried to contact her several times, but she never responded. Her father was dead. It was easy to assume that she must be depressed, but still, the words she said.
やったのはお兄ちゃんよ。
Yeah. Though Takuru hasn't quite put two and two together and realized that what Hinae is actually referring to isn't the murder of her father, but was in fact supposedly the one that pushed her out onto the crossing at the scramble to begin with. I couldn't get them out of my mind. What did she mean? Takuru. There are times in which you are a fine investigator, and there are times in which your brain cells just grind to a complete halt. Oh well. For the last 4 days, I've been feeling kind of weird. Arimura had said she was attacked by someone at Scramble Crossing, which is, to answer your previous question, what she was referring to when she said that Shinjo was the one who did it. And that was the same night I'd found her father's murdered body. Several other things had happened too. Arimura had almost been pushed down the stairs, and a second-year student at Heikyo had been killed. 2 different events at 2 different locations. But if Shinjo was the one who attacked Hinae both times, then who killed them? I know at the top of my head there is a very, very likely suspect at the top of my list, but well, considering the fact that certain events have changed, have been altered, the student's name was Moe Ishida. She hadn't come to school often and was something of a problem child. Also like the fact that, that girl's name is Moe. I doubt it would be Mo. Definitely not that. From the photo I'd seen, she was a young girl with huge twin tails. Ah. Very similar to Hinae's hairstyle. Why had she been killed? Maybe because of her connection / resemblance to Hinae? And what did it have to do with the return of the new generation madness? Absolutely nothing. Nothing whatsoever. There was also that headless body that was burned to death. They still didn't know who it belonged to. I didn't know if it had anything to do with the other murders, but still, it still felt like something awful was creeping up on us. Something awful is definitely creeping. And it's up to us to solve it. Even if, well, there's no avoiding, getting Kurusu upset. I looked at my phone. Still no word from Arimura.
もう一度連絡してみるか。
I wonder if Shinjo will allow her phone calls while she's at the police station. Just as I started to pull her number out of my call history, there was a loud knock at the door.
なんだ。
It was almost 11 o'clock at night. Who could be coming here at this hour? Was it... I can think of several names. Was it my turn next? Maybe.
部屋だ。 来るな来るな来るなよ。
There had to be some way. Was there some way to fight back?
そうだ。
My power? Wouldn't be too hasty. I have my power. It was no good. Damn it. She told me not to use it, and so I hadn't. But if I'd known this was going to happen, I would have practiced. The knocking at the door grew even louder.
開けてください。
Now I heard a voice.
開けてください。
Huh? That voice.
有村。
Yeah, I thought so. Not my, not my first thought. Actually, to be honest, I thought that it was either going to be Serica or Gen. But anyway, I quickly went to the door and looked outside, and saw Arimura frantically pounding on the door with tears in her eyes. How did you get out of police custody? Well, not that you're the one who is supposed to be in police custody, but still, I doubt that Shinjo would be happy about this. I quickly opened it and let her in. Well, let's see what's happened. But I doubt it's anything good. Something was wrong with her. She grabbed me, shaking, tears streaming down her face.
どうした有村。
Something clearly has her on edge.
私追われてるんです。
Ah. If by he you're referring to Shingo, then we have some serious problems.
追われてるって。まさかまた襲われたのか。
She nodded again and again.
でも追われてるって一体誰に。
We know who.
兄です。
The ghost of Shingo Arimura, if indeed ghost it is and not delusion.
本当にそれはお兄さんだったのか。
Hinae's perception, definitely.
確かに兄でした。間違いありません。
After I'd given her something to drink to calm her down, and heard what she had to say, she told me that it was him for sure. Her family's condo had been destroyed in the Shibuya earthquake, so now they lived in Kanagawa. Her father's autopsy had only been completed yesterday, and then she'd gone back there. The funeral was today, and afterwards she'd come back to Shibuya with her aunt and uncle. The police had asked her to come back down to the station one more time, where they questioned her about her father's relationships. On the way back home, she'd felt someone watching her. But why is the ghost of Shinjo after her? Oh, sorry, Shingo, not to be confused with Shinjo, detective. And when she got near a construction site, some of the building materials had gotten loose and fallen down on top of her. Well, that's definitely not good. She'd been watching her surroundings carefully after all that had happened, and just barely seen them in time to duck out of the way. But when she looked up, she'd seen him. It was her brother, Shingo Arimura.
だから父を殺したのもきっと。
でもお兄さんは亡くなってるんじゃないのか、あの地震で。
Yes, Shingo Arimura is dead. That's what she'd said.
でも生きてたんです。生きて私に復讐しようとしてるんです。
Is that really the truth?
復讐？どうしてお兄さんが有村に復讐するんだよ。
Yeah, that is a very good question, because after all, it was Shingo who basically was the one who told Arimura the truth about her family relations. The fact that she was adopted into the Arimura family.
それは兄は私のせいで命を落としたから。
Arimura had been out during the earthquake, she said. Her brother hadn't realized that she was gone, and he'd entered the condo building to save her, only to die when it collapsed. Or he could have been in the condo when the earthquake hit. I could tell Arimura blamed herself for that.
でもそれっておかしいだろ。
Indeed it doesn't.
どうしてですか？
だってじゃあどうして有村の父さんをお兄さんが殺す必要がある？
それは父が家族を裏切っていたから。
Well, to be fair, both of Hinae's adoptive parents were basically cheating on each other. And of course, Shingo knew that all too well. But even though he had lied to Arimura, and in spite of his, telling her not to lie, Shingo's reasons for lying was that he was actually trying to protect Arimura, even though that pretty much betrayed his own principles. Arimura didn't tell me how he betrayed his family, so I didn't know what had happened. But that didn't change the fact that what she was saying didn't make sense. Yeah.
仮にお兄さんが生きていたとしてだ。そもそも生きてるなら復讐するっていうのは妙な話じゃないか。
Yeah. Because after all that's said and done, Shingo Arimura actually cared about Hinae, sister or not. So why would Shingo get revenge if he cared about her so much? Not that Takuru or Hinae could ever figure it out based on everything, all the information that's available at this point in time, but I don't think that's really Shingo.
それは
だろ、助かってたなら復讐なんてすることはないはずだ。第一、お兄さんは有村のこと大事にしてたんだろ。だったら恨んだりってのも変じゃないか。
Yeah. Shingo's personality was a benevolent one. He might have been disappointed by the fact that his parents were cheating and ultimately betraying Hinae in the process. But they were still his parents. So yeah, I know your nerves are a little bit addled there, Hinae Arimura, but what Takuru is telling you is actually worth listening to.
でも私は見たんです。あれは確かに兄でした。
Again, not so sure about that.
お兄ちゃん、どうして。
No matter how much I tried to persuade her otherwise, Arimura kept insisting that what she had seen was her brother. Yeah, I don't think she's in a position to think rationally. Was that really him that she saw? Even if it was someone who looked just like her brother, that didn't explain why they were attacking her, let alone why they would kill her father.
そうだ。有村、僕は君に謝らなきゃいけない。
謝る。何をですか。
知らなかったんだ。あれが君の父さんだったなんて。それなのに僕はあんな風に。
ああ。
だから悪かったって。
いいです。別に気にしてませんから。
Well, I definitely called that. It felt like she wasn't just trying to make me feel better. She really meant it. If only...
それに、私自身よくわかってないんです。父が死んで悲しいのかどうか。
If only Takuru could convince her otherwise.
有村。
不思議なくらいにわからないんですよ。自分でも。
After all, the loving parents and family in Hinae's mind were nothing more than a fiction.
父は私にずっと嘘をついていました。そんな父を私は多分ずっと許せないでいた。だから心のどこかで当然の報いだって思っている私がいるんです。
Well, as morbid as that sounds, you might have a point there, Hinae.
もちろんだからってあんなむごい死に方をする必要はなかったって思いますけど。
Since she didn't tell me, I had no way of knowing what lie her dad told. But I could imagine that whatever it was, it left a big impression on her. If nothing else, it was enough to affect her power as a Gigolomaniac. Oh, you have no idea, Takuru, how right you are. And another bright morning. I went outside and stretched, and I could feel all the bones in my body popping. It was still just past 8, maybe a good time to get some exercise. Even at this hour, I could still hear people playing basketball at the nearby court. Arimura had ended up sleeping in my bed. After all that had happened, she was mentally exhausted. No kidding. Even for me, it didn't feel right to wake her up and send her home. And she'd just been through such a scare. I decided to let her sleep. and so I ended up trying to sleep on the tiny hard floor, and mostly failing. Well, suppose we had to compromise somehow. I decided to go wash my face at the nearby fountain when the phone in my pocket began to vibrate.
電話
It was from Kunasato.
どうしたんですかこんな時間に。もしかして何かあったんですか
Was going to ask, how did Mio get a hold of Takuru's new phone number, but I guess he gave it to her when they went over to Mio's apartment.
なんだ、朝から随分とご挨拶だな。
I would have reacted the same way to anyone else calling me at this hour.
例の事件について、新庄刑事から入ってきた警察の見解を教えておいてやろうと思ったんだが、必要ないならいい。
ちょっといいなんて言ってないじゃないですか
I could tell that she wasn't joking. She really was about to hang up the phone. I quickly tried to stop her.
その情報とやら教えてくださいぜひ
まあいいだろう。まず、ニュージェネ事件になぞらえた一連の事件についてだが。
That would be the first four. She meant the first four murders up until Watabi's death.
ハイダリコと呼ばれる女による単独の犯行では、説明がつかない部分が多々あると考えているようだ。
Yeah. Again, Rico's ability is pyrokinesis, which doesn't line up with the unusual manner of their deaths.
つまり他に誰か共犯がいるってことですか
あるいは、ハイダリコ自身は放火事件だけで、他に関しては一切関わっていないという可能性もある。
Yeah. In other words, Rico Haida, his actions were nothing more than a convenient coincidence. If that were true, it would mean that there were multiple people involved, and that the real killer hadn't been caught. Or maybe whatever organization had built that lab in the basement was responsible. Which meant that Arimoto and I couldn't feel safe. Not yet. No, Arimoto had already said she'd been attacked. But...
それから、お前たち二人も疑われているぞ。
Well, that's unfortunate, but not surprising.
まさか僕と有村がですか
聞いていなかったのか。お前たちと言ったんだ。他に誰がいる？
Well, to be fair, Hinae Arimura has an alibi. There are countless people who would ultimately say that she was at the Shibuya Scramble. And I'm pretty sure that it wouldn't take much for even Detective Shinjo to be able to prove that. As for Takuru, however, he was all by his lonesome with some mountain view on the way back from the convenience store. In other words, he has an alibi and he hasn't.
どうして僕たちが疑われなきゃいけないんですか
柿田の事件、渡部の事件に続き、これで3つ目だ。いくらなんでも偶然が続きすぎているというのが警察の考えらしい。
In the case of Watabe, yeah, Takuru and Hinae were in the crowd the whole time. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like the police are using their thinking caps
でもこれまで
properly.
の件については僕たちは容疑から外れてるはずじゃないんですか。
これまでの事件はな。だがそれ以降の事件となると話はまた別だ。先日の被害者は知っているな。壁法の2年の
石田萌ですか。あんまり学校にも来てない生徒だったってのは聞きましたけど。
そうだ。どうもその娘は有村ひなえに憧れていたらしい。
I'm actually surprised that Hinae actually has fans. In fact, I would actually go so far to say that Hinae would also be surprised she has fans.
有村に
According to Kunosato, who was getting her information from Shinjo, of course, Moe Ishida would have been a very quiet student in middle school who didn't really stand out. At school, she would mostly sit in the corner and read books. Arimura's name had shown up in her diary. Arimura was always cheerful and friends with everybody, even if that was just a emotional front on her part. Arimura had spoken to Moe too, and that had evidently made her very happy. After that, Moe had decided she wanted to be like Arimura. It wasn't necessarily a good thing, especially in the end. She copied Arimura's hairstyle and even started going downtown, where she eventually fell in with a bad crowd and stopped coming to school.
だからってそんなの有村には関係ないじゃないですか。
どんな些細なものでも関連がありそうとなると結びつけて考えるのが刑事という人種だ。それに原因は有村ひなえの言動にもある。
There is a fine line between connection and coincidence.
有村の
先日の聴取で有村ひなえは言っていたらしい。死んだ兄が生きていて自分を襲っていると。
So she did tell them the exact same thing. Even though I'm pretty sure that both Shinjo and Mio are aware that Shingo is dead.
それは僕にも言ってました。
そういうところが情緒不安定と考えられているらしい。それが事件に関与しているせいだとも。
Well, I actually wouldn't say that they're wrong.
そんなあんな事件に何度も出くわせば不安定にもなりますよ。
Several of the victims had already been related to her. Of course, the police had noticed that too.
それでお前の目から見てどうなんだ、有村ひなえは。
Well, first and foremost, Mio Kunosato, there is one puncture hole in your argument there. And that is the decapitated corpse that was found before Moe. The one that is yet to be identified. Yeah, the first victim in all this. If we still don't know how that ties in with everything.
ちょっと参ってるみたいです。
But Hinae really is at her wit's end.
そうか。まあ注意して見ておいてやれ。
That is probably the most considerate thing you've said all day.
どうした？
あなた、本当に久野里さんですか？
どういう意味だ？
だって久野里さんが僕たちの心配をしてくれるなんて。
お前、命拾いをしたな。これが電話でなければ、今すぐ叩きのめしているところだ。
It really was Kunosato.
とにかく、有村ひなえの動向には注意していろ。パニックを起こした人間は、何をやらかすかわからんからな。
Oh, you have a point there, Mio. That was all Kunosato said before she hung up. Now who's being rude? Hironoe Kakita, Moe Ishida, and Arimura's dad. I think this is actually the first time in which, at least that I can remember, that we actually learned Kakita's first name. In a sense, that she was the first to find the body. It was also Watabe. Given the fact that everyone else was also there, that's actually somewhat incorrect. It was true that too many of the victims were related to Arimura. Not all of them. Maybe it was natural for the police to suspect her. I wouldn't be so sure about that. Speaking of Hinae...
Huh?
There she is. She must have woken up. Obviously, since she's awake. Arimura smiled in relief and ran over to me.
起きたらいないからどこか行ったのかと思っちゃいました。
Arimura still didn't look great, but she seemed to have calmed down since yesterday. So that's a
ごめんなさい。
bonus.
私いつの間にか寝ちゃってて。
いや、それはいいよ。ただ、どうするこの後。
帰ります。おじさんやおばさんも心配してるだろうし。
Well, as dislikable as they really are the quote-unquote relatives that she has.
そう。じゃあ途中まででよければ送ってくよ。
Even if she calmed down, I didn't feel safe sending her back alone. That's definitely a good call. She must have felt the same way because she just nodded. And off we go.
それにしても、日曜は人が多くて嫌になるな。
ですよね。
Not as bad as Mondays, I can tell you that.
あ、そういえば知ってるか？この前伊藤のやつが。
I try to keep up as much meaningless talk as I could while we headed toward Arimura's house. Even with all the murders, it was still the weekend. There was only a week to go until the festival. The whole town was in a state of excitement. It was a good thing for us. Is it? Arimura was gradually starting to smile again, in fact. Genuinely and not pretend smile.
伊藤先輩、そんなことしたんですか？
She seems to be playing along.
あいつにも困ったもんだよな。
There's a lot of things that you don't know about Shinji Ito.
先輩、そろそろこの辺りで大丈夫。
Suddenly Arimura froze, and the smile is gone from her face.
お兄ちゃん。
Oh dear. That's an ill omen.
Huh?
A very, very ill omen. I quickly spun around, but I didn't see anyone.
有村。
いや、お兄ちゃん。
落ち着け有村。お兄さんなんていない。
I grabbed her by the shoulders and I could feel that she was shaking.
でも今そこに。
Huh. So either we can derive two things from this. Either he was there and he's hiding every time Takuru turns around, conveniently, when he's not looking, or the fact that Hinae Arimura is the only one who can see the apparition of Shingo. Which means that if Shingo is a delusion, that delusion is being broadcast into Hinae Arimura's dead spots and no one else's, Takuru included. She was pointing at a mannequin in a store window. There was nothing else there.
とにかく帰ろう。家まで送っていくよ。
You can't leave her by herself. Definitely not in that state. November 2nd, 2015, Monday. The next day, Arimura came to school and...
ChäoS! セリ、それに先輩方。
apparently behaving like her old self. And yeah, noticed she's wearing her white hair pieces this time instead of the black ones, which she was wearing yesterday. She was back to normal.
おはよう。あら、おはよう。
チース。
おう。
いやー、皆さんいつも仲良しさんで羨ましいっすね。私も文芸部やめて新聞部入っちゃおっかな。
Are you telling the truth, Hinae Arimura? I don't think you're being quite so truthful. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't.
何言ってんの。もううちの部員みたいなもんじゃん。ねえ、タク。
In a manner of speaking.
そうだな。
本当っすか？じゃあ新聞部員ってことにしちゃおっかな。あれ、でも掛け持ちってできたんですっけ？
I don't think the academy would let you do that.
もちろん、申請さえ出せば認められるわよ。
Or maybe I'm wrong. Thanks for claiming that up, Kurusu.
なるほどなるほど。
Yeah, actually would. Yeah, now that I think about it, it actually would make sense for people to be able to join multiple clubs in a school environment, obviously. Duh.
部活入っちまえば宮代と一緒にいる口実だってできるしな。
Shinji, why?
なんだよそれ。別に僕たちは。
れない照れない照れない照れない
ってお前が言うな。
I hadn't seen Arimoto this chipper in a while. It felt a little forced, sure, but it was a good sign.
あ、そうだねえ、ヒカリオにチョコレートバーができるのって知ってます？
Wait. Doesn't quite make sense.
チョコレートバーって当たりが出たらもう一本ってやつ？違う、それはチョコパッツでしょうが。
Choco bats. What is that? Well, we're about to find out. A chocolate-covered, bat-shaped stick of fried dough that's been loved in Japan for 50 years. Not only is it cheap, there's a removable sticker on the back. If your sticker says hit or home run, you get another one free. So it's the, baseball kind of bat and not, or the cricket type of bat and not mammal-shaped bat. Also, I was mildly confused there because Hinae seemed to imply that they were planning on putting chocolate on the Hikaru building itself, which would kind of be strange. I mean, there was a story in Willie and Charlie in the Chocolate Factory where somebody made a building completely out of chocolate, and by some time later it had completely melted due to the sun. So
チョコレートバーってあれよね。イートインなんかもある。
no, Kurisu, not that kind of bar. They don't make bars out of chocolate. I mean, as quaint as a chocolate building would be, it doesn't work.
そうそう、それです。オープンしたらみんなで。
Yeah, here's the thing. It's not actually made out of chocolate. It's just where they sell chocolate. And then she stopped. Well, that didn't last long. I had a bad feeling. Very bad feeling.
ひなちゃん？いや。
She froze. Even here, she's been haunted by the apparition/delusion of her dead brother. I quickly grabbed her before she could fall over.
おい、どうした？
気を失ってるわ。タクル、すぐに保健室へ連れて行きなさい。
Yeah, that's definitely a good idea. Some people might think she's crazy, but someone out there is trying to drive her crazy. As I picked her up, I glanced in the direction she'd been looking.
おい、何があったんだ？
Well, I don't think Kawahara is the ghost of Shinjo. Kawahara was standing there. He'd happened to be passing by and was looking at us in surprise. There was no one else around.
タク、ひなちゃんどうだった？
That
ちょっ
depends.
と疲れてるんだろうって話。ひとまず保健室で休ませろって。
Well, there's not much that the school nurses can do.
そっか。
I knew what had happened. She'd seen him again. Maybe she'd mistaken for Kawahara for her brother. Again, you're not entirely wrong about that.
タクル、有村さん、何かあったの？
The answer to that question painfully is yes. First the mannequin, now Kawahara. Yeah, someone out there is toying with Hinae Arimoto's mind.
何かって。
ちょっと様子がおかしかったような気がするんだけど。
A little strange is an understatement.
ああ、それ私も思った。普段よりも無理してる感大きいっていうか。
That she was.
マジで俺全然気づかなかったけど。
Yeah, she was trying her best, but in the end, her best wasn't good enough. Was it okay to tell them? Well, we'll have to tell them sooner or later. Yeah, we're especially gonna have to tell them since Kazuki is here as well. Even Kazuki had stopped playing SO2 and came over to me with a look of concern on her face.
なんだよ、和樹。お前も気になるのか？
I would definitely say so.
わかったよ。
I told them all everything that had happened to Arimoto over the past few days. That she said her brother was still alive. That he was trying to get revenge on her.
ね
It was Serica who spoke first.
え、ひなちゃんのお兄さんって本当に生きてるの？いえ、亡くなっていると聞いてるけど。
Indeed. And on top of that, he was buried under a huge pile of rubble. Even if he had survived, he would have been in a wheelchair for pretty much the rest of his life.
でも本人は生きてると思っちまってるんだろ？
Yeah, she does, and that's the problem. That's the issue that's at hand here.
僕にもわからない。ただ確かなのは、有村の周りで実際に事件が頻発しているということだ。
Yeah. These 3 new murders that deviate from the previous 4 murders. If there were dead bodies, that meant somebody had killed them.
思うんだけど、まずはそのお兄さんのことについてちゃんと調べてみた方がいいんじゃないかしら。
That would mean talking to Hinae's so-called relatives, and I don't think that we're actually going to be able to get somewhere that way. Of course, with Mimose's help, we might get somewhere.
でも
That's a tall
調
order.
べるったってどうやって？
お兄さんは地震で亡くなったんでしょ？だったら
Of course. I went with Kurusu's suggestion and visited the earthquake memorial with Serika. The memorial bore the names of everyone who died in the quake. I was worried about Arimura, but Kurusu said she'd take her home. It was probably safe to let her handle it.
どうタク。
待ってくれ。確か
His name was supposedly Shingo Arimura, so it should be on the memorial plaque. Looking at the memorial, I was reminded of how many people had died during the earthquake, including Kurusu's friend Senri Minamisawa. My parents, Serika's parents, and Kurusu's and Yui's parents all had their names here too.
有村有村。あ、
見つけたか。
ほらここ。
Shingo Arimura. So it is there. From the age when he died, it was safe to assume that this was him. But this didn't mean anything for sure. The damage from the Shibuya earthquake had been incredible. Some people had been declared dead without their bodies ever being found. And in some cases, those people have been later found committing crimes. That's unfortunate. So to be sure, I...
ああ、もう来てたのか。待たせたな。すまない。
Ah, so, Shinjo must have gotten the same idea we did.
すみません急に。
That, or, yeah, Takuru himself was the one who called, Shinjo out here on such short notice. I contacted Shinjo and had him meet me here.
いや、例の事件のことなら、こっちもできるだけ情報を知っておいた方がいい。いかに些細なことであろうとね。
On that, we can definitely, say that we're on the same page. Lately, I've been starting to think that Detective Shinjo might be a lot better at his job than he looked. That he is. Of course, maybe people like him never really fit in an organization and couldn't grow to their full potential.
で、聞きたいのは、有村ひなえの兄についてだったな。
Indeed we do, but that is going to have to wait until the next episode, so when we return, adventurers, we shall try and glean some more information about the late Shingo Arimura. As always, until next we meet.